We come to this place for monsters. We come to horror movies to scream, to cringe, to scare. Because we need that. All of us.
That hair-raising feeling we get when the lights begin to dim. And we are taken somewhere we've never been before. Not just entertained, but somehow terrorized together.
Dazzling guts on a huge silver screen. Stabs that I can feel.
Somehow, murder feels so good in a place like this.
Our final girls feel like the best parts of us, and stories feel disturbing and powerful. Because here they are. In horror we trust. What's your favorite scary movie?
That would be some lemonade.
Would you like some lemonade?
Some ice cold lemonade.
Would you like some geese?
Well,
Or
folks,
pig? Rotting pig? Okay. Well, folks,
we are back with another lovely episode featuring a film that we just checked out called Pearl. The sequel to Tai West's film.
a sequel
Or prequel. More of a prequel.
pre-sequel?
Per sequel. Sequel
Sequel pre?
Fuck. Yes, a prequel to Tai West's movies X.
Yeah.
Again, featuring Mia Goth.
Yeah, and X was released in March, and so now it's September of this year. So this movie was released within the same year. Pretty crazy.
I was not expecting us to
I
get it this
know.
quickly. I was kind of in shock.
Yeah, I mean, when they showed the little trailer for Pearl at the end after credits of X, I was like, oh, it seems like they got a lot, but like, obviously don't know how much. They
Yeah.
had the whole film already, but it turns out they basically did.
Yeah. Was it already filmed, or had they just been in a little bit of production at that point?
They had the idea, they were already like, they had the idea for Pearl even before they started production
Yeah.
on X, which is cool. And they wrote it within the 2-week quarantine they had to take before production on X.
So cool.
And then I did read that they started production on Pearl about 4 weeks after the wrap of X, which is fucking crazy.
That's nuts.
I mean, I guess they, they were like planning at the same time as they were filming X, like, using the barn and the locations and stuff. They would already be kind of conceptualizing in their minds, like, oh, let's make it look like this for Pearl.
I love that. A trilogy from the start.
Yeah, it's so interesting, especially for horror.
Yeah.
To me, at least.
I don't think I've ever encountered a movie that let its sequel or prequel out in the same year of the original release.
Yeah.
That's really unique.
It really is, and I wonder why they kind of wanted to just like put it out there so fast.
That's an interesting decision.
To keep it fresh in people's minds,
I mean, it got us hyped.
Yeah,
We're like,
it definitely
okay,
did.
we get to see both in the span of a few months.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and they've already announced the third part, Maxine.
Yes.
Max Triple X scene, which will take place in the 80s,
Yes.
which should be fun.
I'm excited for that as well. Which they did again at the end of Pearl. We got the little after credits snippet of Maxine, which wasn't as thorough as the little clippet of like Pearl was, but it was still enough, at least for myself, to be excited.
So that makes me wonder if they did the same level of pre-planning and like if they're gonna, if they're already in production. I would assume so if they're already releasing the little teaser.
We were, Chris and I were discussing this on the car ride back. Like, we wonder how long it's gonna take to get to see Maxine, if it's gonna follow the same trend.
Yeah, I feel like if to keep the momentum up, I would assume.
Yeah.
So what a feat.
Yeah.
Damn.
That's impressive. 3 movies within the span of 12 months. Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah. Mia Goth must be really like, I don't just dialed in.
Yeah.
She
dialed
is
in.
Pearl. She is Maxine.
Dialed in and exhausted, poor thing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at least they got X, the bigger, for her, I would assume, because she has to play 2 characters and one in full prosthetic makeup and everything. Got that big load out of the way. Now she can
kind of relax a little bit. But that makes me curious for Maxine. Like, what are we going to see from Mia Goth, like, in this one? Because she's been impressive.
Yeah, especially
so
in
far.
This one.
Yeah.
Pearl, I think her like acting chops really got to shine.
Oh my god, yes.
In
absolutely.
A particular scene we will talk about.
Yeah.
So a quick synopsis of Pearl, if you don't know. Trapped on her family's isolated farm, Pearl must tend to her ailing father under the bitter and overbearing watch of her devout mother. Lusting for a glamorous life, like she's seen in the movies, Pearl finds her ambitions, temptations, and repressions all colliding in this origin story of X's iconic villain. So, I guess I'll ask you, what were your expectations for Pearl kind of before going into it and seeing that little trailer?
Honestly, I don't know if I had too much, like, expectation put on it. I just knew it was kind of going to be a wild ride, seeing what Pearl's character kind of was from the previous film. Like, I was just kind of like, oh, well, this is going to be a wild ride. I guess I was just really excited to see her character development and like what kind of made her go nuts, what made her tick, like how did this girl end up in the position that she's in, or this woman, excuse me. But yeah, I just didn't have a lot. With watching the trailer, I will say I still think Pearl is vicious, but I was expecting her to be like murdering left and right.
Right.
Like just taking out everyone. And I think, and I appreciated that later on it was a little more subdued.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful that she did not kill as many animals as I assumed would happen in the trailer, because
they do show one.
Trigger warning on that. Yeah, there is one. But I was expecting her to just be like murdering her entire farm.
Right, which the mom does say like she has been, and she does say that she had been.
Well, but I'm just glad that it was implied as opposed to shown.
I know that would have been rough.
Yeah. But I would say I kept a fairly open mind going into Pearl.
Yeah, I am right there with you. I didn't have a lot of expectations, because you do get a good sense of Pearl already in X, so it was really cool to see it fleshed out. And this Pearl is truly a character study. Very well done. And when you're saying about you thought that she would be murdering left and right and it didn't, I think the style of it definitely influenced that. I mean, I'm sure they already like intended just not to, but I just feel like with the style, this X being the 70s and like Texas Chainsaw, like there is a lot of murdering left and right, and now this is a melodrama, Technicolor, like feels like Mary Poppins or Wizard of Oz. Definitely lent itself to like how they portrayed the story. No,
I agree.
Withholding that.
I thought it was really interesting too, though, how like you were saying how her character just kind of developed through this film, considering we had seen so much of Pearl in X. Because in X, I feel like we get 2 kind of different versions of Pearl. Like X, she's more this sex crazed, like lonely, like dare I say decrepit housewife. Whereas in this movie, I feel like Pearl, we're going on a journey with her. It seems like she is just insecure and she just wants to be loved and paid attention to, which is vastly different the character portrayed in X, but you can kind of connect the dots and see how her personality would have evolved into that.
Festered.
Yeah, which I thought was like pretty incredible.
Yeah.
The character development on that is beautiful.
Yeah. It's crazy because by the end of Pearl, when you do start seeing like her really start to come out, she's already at like, I don't know, an 11 by the end. But X, thinking back to X, kind of cranks that up even more, which is like, damn.
And it's kind of wild to think, and I think that it was a very genius, creative decision to put X out before Pearl.
Yeah.
Because like you think that seeing Pearl is like the max that she can go. Like it just it's an interesting play, but like at the end of Pearl you're like, whoa, I feel like this is more extreme than her and X, but then you sit back and think of it and you're like, wait, no.
Yeah.
She was kind of wild in X, and it's kind of mind-blowing to see her character kind of go there.
Cuz I think just her being able to show emotion, and she's obviously like, how do I say, more nimble? I don't know, but like she shows way more emotion in this, and so it feels like it's more like a higher level. But then when you look at the actual, I don't know, kills and and the actions, I feel like X is just whoo.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I would say Pearl met my like the little expectations I had. I just knew it was gonna be crazy. Like it was definitely a little different, the pacing of it. Like we were talking about how it felt really long, but it's only an hour and 42 minutes.
I was saying to Carissa while the movie ended and we were waiting for the after credits kind of little bit, I was like, I was expecting it to be at least an hour and a half later than it actually was. And that's not to say that the movie was bad. It was just like you felt the time kind of crawl. And but you're still absorbed in the film. So like you're not sitting there looking at your clock waiting for time to pass by. But like once it's over, you're just kind of like, oh, that was long.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
And it was a lot to take in.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Definitely a melodrama.
Yes. But we were saying it kind of serves its era. Yeah. Like in that era, films were kind of long and expansive, and it just like they were long. They were long films.
Gone with the Wind.
Yes, very Gone with the Wind. Just like an epic in a sense. And so I just it was kind of cool that every single little element of this film kind of fell in its era. I feel the same way that X kind of fell in that era. So I love seeing this like different decade timeline kind of pull through in each film so exquisitely.
Yeah, especially with horror, I think is even more of a feat.
It's challenging.
And just more unique. Hold for sound. So because they were already planning and preparing for Pearl, even before they started shooting X, they obviously didn't know if A24 would like green light this film, because they don't even know, how X is gonna go or whatever. But A24 read the script and everything, and they were on board from the beginning, so that's dope and makes me like them even more.
A24.
Yeah. And if it wasn't greenlit, it kind of would have just served as character background and prep for Mia just to get into Pearl for X.
Which is really cool. That's pretty extensive.
I know.
Yeah.
So much work.
So much work. Makes me respect Ty West and Mia Goth a little bit more.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. Mia Goth was credited as co-writing with Ty West on Pearl. Wasn't so on X, but for Pearl, which
kind of makes me wonder if after this film, if they're gonna team up again, or if Mia Goth maybe is gonna do something on her own.
Yeah,
kind of things to look forward to for sure.
Yeah, I mean, let's just put it out there. Mia Goth is just exceptional.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
I will watch anything she's in.
I think this movie solidified it for me because, I mean, I loved her in X, but there were so many parts of this film that just showcased her acting ability phenomenally.
Yeah.
And Carissa and I kind of both agreed with one scene in particular in this film, which was her monologue towards the end. So impressive.
Yeah.
I don't even know how long that monologue was, but in that, I mean, it had to have been for a few minutes. And while she was speaking, you didn't get too many shots of responses. The camera just kind of lingered on her face. And even though she was speaking in, for a majority of it, kind of in a monotone voice, the expressions that were on her face that went from angry to hopeful to upset to just distraught.
Yeah.
I just, that monologue was insane.
Yeah.
I was super impressed, and that kind of locked in the idea for me that Mia Goth is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, that was one of the best monologues I've seen in quite some time.
And it was
since Toni Collette, I would say, in Hereditary.
And it was one shot.
Yeah, it was one shot. Apparently they did shoot it quite a few times. It was less than 10 though. He said around 6 or 7 maybe.
That's insane.
And they filmed that whole scene from the top, and it was one shot. So it wasn't just the monologue. It was, so the whole thing when they were filming it was like 15 minutes worth. And obviously that's a lot for Mia Goth to have to like put out there. And Ty West was describing that Mia Goth was super down. She would have done it like 99 times if needed, but that more of the struggle was on the technical side for the crew. And I can imagine. Going back to style, so I think they were initially thinking of doing it in black and white, which would kind of make more sense with the era that this actually is in, which was 1919. So like silent movies. But I guess, and it also would have been cheaper and quicker turnaround, especially since this was such a fast like undertaking. But apparently, I think A24, they had already released quite a few black and white films. They had already done The Lighthouse, Malcolm and Marie, and Come On, Come On, which are all in black and white. So I don't know if it was like A24 telling them, no, let's not do it black and white. But anyway, they decided to turn it into a Technicolor inspired film and have that effect throughout the, as the film, which is beautiful.
I think that's
complete redesign.
Yeah, I didn't notice how many black and white movies A24 has come out with, but I'm glad that they made that decision because I feel like this movie really lent to the Technicolor kind of inspired look. I loved the saturated colors, like especially the reds in this movie. A lot of the blood was just super bright, and I think done in any other way would have kind of been like, why?
Yeah, exactly.
But like with the way that this film was colored to begin with, I think it looked amazing, and it was really cool, and it added kind of a little bit to the grotesqueness because it was so bright and it contrasted on everything.
Yeah, especially the situation and like how kind of miserable like the farm is and it's kind of that juxtaposition with like the misery, but then you have these colors that are so bright and happy. It was a very interesting. That it is so interesting, and how like, because you would think that a black and white film would lend itself more to that isolation and repression on the farm, but I think the Technicolor added much more for Mia Goth as a character, and how, especially like her fantasies and just her hopes and dreams, just her whole motivation. It's just like she dreams of life as what she's seen in the movies and Hollywood movies, especially during, well, I guess it was 1919, so it was silent films, but she still saw the wonder of like filmmaking and being a star. and to have it shot as like the golden age of Hollywood type of film was very suiting.
And I noticed too that like as her character falls deeper and deeper into her madness, her colors that she like wears or that are around her get brighter and brighter and brighter. And then by the end of the movie, she's wearing this bright red dress. And that was just kind of what she wound up in the final piece and in the end. And striking. It was striking, and it was, I think, a really cool creative decision. Yeah. Another kind of technical aspect of the film that I found to be really cool was in the beginning of X, they started with the barn doors that kind of cut the aspect ratio, and then it opens up and you see the farm. And then with this film, Pearl, they don't necessarily play on the aspect ratio, but it's still, you get the barn doors that open up and you see the farm.
Yeah.
Which was kind of a cool correlation that kind of tied the movies together.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like in X, the barn is already open, and so it's like the edges of the doors are cutting it off into that ratio. And in this one, the barn doors are completely closed. You just get like the little sliver of light through them. And then, when they open up, I was saying it felt like when curtains open for like the old Hollywood movies or performances.
I didn't get that, but when Carissa stated it, I was like, oh my God, that was so smart. Like, yes.
Like even stage plays, and it's just like, dun, 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 dun.
Which was just, again, it kind of tied into its era so seamlessly. And it's good. Ty West, hats off.
I know. It's very creative.
Very creative. Speaking of like characters and development, is there another character in the film that you really, really liked? Not just the character itself, but maybe the actor's performance, or was like Mia Goth your main kind of standing?
I did really like the mom.
Yeah.
I would say she's probably the one you see most of besides Pearl, and you do get like almost a small character study on the mom too. And then you come to find out that she's kind of also living this repressed life as Pearl feels, but she has her own kind of monologue, if you will, where she's just so upset with like Pearl coming off as ungrateful, because even though they share like basically the same feelings about their life and wishing something better, they had dreamed of something better for their life, the mom takes it as you're so ungrateful, like I did I'm in this position to like sustain the family, the dad's
so the film takes place around the era of the Spanish flu, and then I think we're led to believe that he had gotten sick from the flu, and he ended up being bound in a wheelchair, pretty much unresponsive. Like he could breathe, he could see, he could hear, but he couldn't feed himself, he couldn't wash himself or anything like that. So he kind of became the burden on the family. Yeah.
And so basically when the mom starts finally lashing out and like saying what she's kind of been withholding, you come to find out that she's just, she's very unhappy with her life. She says, I was supposed to be his wife, not his mother, and everything. And, it just echoes Pearl's kind of frustrations. But it's just very interesting to see them, like, take it out on each other and really, really go at it.
Yeah.
I had a lot of empathy, but also I was like, I don't know. I just was frustrated with both of them because it's like, Pearl's kind of coming off as like a bratty child, like you said, and the mom's coming like, oh, give her a little freedom. You don't have to be that harsh on her or whatever. Like she just wants to live, but the mom's so bitter about her life now. Yeah.
It seemed like we were witnessing generational trauma being passed down in a cycle, just being repeated. Yeah. And it was just but echoing you, it was very interesting because you wanted to see the mother as a villain, but at the same time you were just like, Pearl, stop being a toddler. Come on. So it was a very push and pull kind of emotional reaction watching the two of them. When
it came to that head, it was very raw and felt like just very tense too, and you kind of were waiting for something to happen. And like when something did happen, spoiler, and she starts kind of fighting with the mom a bit. The mom catches on fire and she goes up like a Christmas tree.
I had made a joke after viewing it. I was like, she went up so quickly. Like, what was her clothing made out of? Fucking gasoline? Like, she caught so quickly.
Yeah.
So quickly. But
she does try to put her out.
Did put her out.
She does, yeah.
I feel like one of the most disrespectful ways, by just picking up a pot off the stove from the dinner that they had been eating and just threw it on her.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then
God.
It's like finally when she sees that she kind of has the upper hand, maybe emotionally and physically, on her mom, then she kind of just is like, leans into it like, this is my chance.
Yeah, which I feel
like I'm gonna take it.
Again, is very childlike and very toddler-like, because I feel like kids that young, they run on pure emotion. They don't have logic. They don't have reasoning. It's just whatever they're feeling, they react on. So if they're hungry, they're gonna cry. If they're angry, they're gonna swing their arms around. And I feel like that's exactly what Pearl is. She just runs on pure emotion.
I mean, can we talk about all her moments where she breaks?
Yeah, where it's just like, I don't know if it was from the repression of her family upbringing, or if it's just a screw loose, or what this, or maybe a combination of both, but she just reminded me of this, like, just genuinely a child that just didn't know how to mentally compartmentalize things that are going on in her life, and just if anything was a hurdle for her, her emotions were just explosive. Literally and metaphorically.
I mean, when she starts screaming at the projectionist guy that she was hooking up with. I mean, and you see, like, the build-up. You always see kind of a build-up before she full-on just starts wailing. But, like, just the subtle change in her expression.
You can see it in her face.
Her face drops. And then she kind of... like a toddler's, like, pouty face. And, like, what's wrong? Like, you don't like me? Or why? And then she just goes, like, all in and just, like... screaming, just uninhibited, like unhinged, yes,
unhinged.
In the subtle changes, she does, like, she comes off scary, and like everyone points out, you're kind of scary, off-putting, and I
thought, okay, speaking of characters, it's gonna sound really funny, but I feel like the pitchfork became a character in and of its own. Because when Pearl picks up that pitchfork, again, for the first time in Pearl, the audience had an audible reaction to it. And I feel like that pitchfork has its own notoriety again.
Like, they have a shot where it's just on the pitchfork leaning up against the wall, but it looks so, like,
menacing and, like, menacing. Beckoning for somebody to pick it up.
Yeah, because then you can't help but think of an X, the great shots and use of the pitchfork.
I'm almost wondering if the pitchfork is gonna make an appearance in the third installment.
Going off of that, I read that Ty West said that the goal was to make something that felt very childish and full of wonder, but then make it demented and disturbing. And I think that completely describes what we were talking about, the childlike aspects that she resembles. And because she has the childlike wonder of her fantasies and just, dancing, and it's very light, but then it just twists into, like, the most demented, disturbing.
With that being said, like, I mentioned to Carissa before recording this too that Mia Goth's character Pearl looked like she was about 15 when the film first started. Like, she just had such childlike features. And she just, I don't know, she just looked like this little rosy-cheeked little baby.
Running around gleefully.
Talking to animals. Like,
fucking
very, like, Disney princess almost.
Absolutely.
And then by the end of the movie, that was just gone.
going to the end of the movie where things really take a turn. I mean, like, they start taking a turn, obviously, when her and her mom had the head, and basically she ends up killing both her parents and posing them at the dinner table super creepily. And then she goes to the audition, which was kind of like the moment you're anticipating and dreading at the same time, because you're like, you know, you want her to get it. You want her to get it just so she'll fucking calm down. No. But, like, you know, but you just know that she can't. It's not going to happen. And she doesn't get it. And I did really like that scene.
I did too.
Like, when she enters and it's all slow motion and it's very dull. And, like, she's wearing the red dress, but it's so dull. And when she's standing up on the stage at first. And then when she starts her number and it's, like, super, silly.
Just the smile on her face, too, was just... I don't know if you read it this way, but I felt it was so unsettling.
It was.
Yeah. And I was like, oh no.
And then it, like, transitions into what's in her head, what's playing in her head, and she's part of this chorus line in a big movie, doing that kind of, chorus line dance. And I was like, watching it, I was like, I mean, she's doing a good job for, like, what that is and what she's going for. And I was like, maybe she has a chance. And she just, I think her confidence, or, like, what she was believing in made me believe, too, a little bit. And then, like, the switch, the cut to, like, done, it's crickets. And they're like, that'll be a no.
Yeah. Just didn't even entertain the idea of possibility. Just immediately were like, nope.
And then her reactions to that, and her emotions starting to build up, and she completely...
And I think, too, with the reasoning that the judges gave to her, where they were looking for someone all-American and blonde, I think that ate at her psyche a little bit, too, and was the reason that she kept questioning her sister-in-law at the end during the monologue.
God. Yep.
Where she's like, you got it, didn't you?
Yeah, because I thought, I was like, oh, her sister's-in-law's probably going to get it, because she fits the bill. That part, so leading up into the monologue, and to me, like, the most tense part of the film.
Dripping with dread.
Yeah, even more so than the audition. Yeah. It's like she has her monologue with the sister-in-law and kind of pouring her soul out. But it's like diluted, you know, she's in another one of her fantasies where, because the sister is acting like, oh, act like I'm Howard, your husband, and just say what you would to him. You can say it to me, like, practice. And then she just pours her soul out and is like...
I mean, every deep, dark thing that this girl has done just is laid out on the literal table.
Yeah, she basically confesses to doing murderous things. Yeah.
But she, like, glazed over it, which I thought was very interesting. It was just like, oh, another Sunday of activities.
Yeah. You can just see the, like... just demented narcissism, but childish.
Yeah. It was like the childish hopefulness mixed in with this just like deluded, angry person.
And like adult reality too, to what her situation is, at least in her eyes.
I don't know if this read for you, but I had, like, conflicting emotions watching that scene. Mm-hmm. So, aside from being in awe at Mia Goth's performance, I, for a split second, had empathy for her and kind of felt bad for her. Yeah. But then I was like, oh, no. This girl's unhinged. Yeah. Like, something really bad's gonna happen after this kind of dumping of her trauma, essentially. Yeah. And I was just, again, a little bit of empathy and feeling bad, but there was also that layer of fear there where I'm like, oh, what is this girl?
There's something not right.
She literally had nothing else left to lose at that point because she had trauma dumped everything. And then it was just kind of like, okay, well, now this unsuspecting person knows this much about her. Like, I don't think that she's gonna get away with knowing that much about Pearl's intentions.
I know. And for a second, I mean, Pearl just has like that, just a great duality to her that she exhibits to people.
Yeah.
And so when she starts, she comes out of the little, I don't know, spell of like acting like it's Howard, and she sees her as the sister-in-law again, Mitzi.
That's her name.
Yeah. And then she's like saying, I know you got it, like, I'm glad for you either way, right? And like, for a second I believed her.
Yeah. But then you look in her eyes and you can see that Mitzi is like full of fear, and she's very calculated and watching exactly what she says to Pearl, because she realized how much of a threat Pearl is, and she's trying her best to get away from the situation, which I thought it was really interesting, because most people, I don't know, my reaction would be, if I had said what I could to get out of the house, I would run to my car.
Yeah.
But she walked very evenly and very calmly, and I think it was to just soothe Pearl's mind and to not make Pearl suspect that she thought any differently towards her, to just kind of get her out of that situation.
Yeah. I mean, Mitzi really impressed me in that scene as a character. I was just like, oh, I didn't think she'd be like this kind of intuitive, I guess.
It was very intuitive and very calculated.
But yeah, and then that scene when she's leaving the house, where you're just like, okay, she's almost home free. Yeah. I thought her car was out. I thought she had a car, and she was out there. So I was like, get in. Yeah. But then I guess she walked. I don't know.
I assume there was a car there too. Maybe she parked a little further off and we never saw her get to that point. Or maybe they did walk. Yeah. I don't know.
And just the walk, and then Pearl coming out, kind of eyeing her. Then you just see Pearl casually walking over to the axe.
I legitimately thought she was going to go back for the pitchfork.
Oh, yeah.
And when I saw her grab the axe, I was like, oh my no.
God. That's some Jack Torrance shit right now. And yeah, I do love that shot of, it's like one shot leaving the house again, and super, like, a wide shot where Missy's just walking, turning into a run, and then Pearl running after her with the fucking axe, and of course there's a classic trip.
Yeah. And I think that intentional style choice of, like, leaving it as one long clip instead of making cuts to it added to the anxiety of the scene, because I think if they were to have like cut it and then switched to a different angle or a different viewpoint, it would have given you a break and you would have been like, oh, okay, and then you would ramp back up. But just having it just that whole time, you just track with them,
complete dread.
Oh God, so much anxiety in that moment.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, just a classic, like, her running just felt so slow at the same time. Yes. You're like, come on.
You just want to scream
like, both
at her.
running just felt kind of slow, but she was catching up. Yeah. That was good. Yeah. I liked how, when Pearl, whenever she killed someone, with the exception of her dad, I don't remember if they did it with her dad, but like they always had that super low angle looking
predatory
up at her
angle
with like the axe or the pitchfork standing over them. Oh.
Well, I think it's because she didn't have resentment towards her dad.
Yeah.
And that's probably why they didn't make her look villainous. Yeah. Because she empathized. She empathized.
She felt bad as she suffocated him to death.
Well, no. I'm not saying that necessarily she felt bad for killing him.
Yeah,
but I think she didn't have any animosity towards her dad. She not only conversated with her dad, but she took care of her dad. She bathed him and fed him, and I think because he wasn't inundating her with like what he expects of her or wants her to be, or any of these actively repressing her, she didn't have this resentment over him. And so when she did kill him, I don't think it was necessarily as vicious as some of the previous characters. It was, in her mind, maybe a little kinder of a way to do it. Yeah. Although, but that's when she finally did it, because at one point she almost fed her dad with a crocodile, but her mom stopped her.
There were just some times where, like, I was also kind of guessing the mother's, like, intentions and emotions. Just the way she would watch Pearl out the window, very like Psycho.
Yeah.
I was kind of trying to work that out in my mind, trying to guess at that. Like, you know, is Pearl kind of just like inherently evil? Like, has something wrong with her? Or like, and the mother in her life kind of just exacerbates it?
Yeah.
Or is it like
something that was learned?
Yeah, like just completely learned and festered, you know?
Yeah.
It's an interesting conversation.
Now that you mention that too, I feel like maybe in a very toned down kind of way, the way that her mother watched Pearl like out the window almost kind of made me feel like it mirrored the way that Pearl watched Maxine out of her window.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
So it's kind of like, again, this weird cycle of just kind of wishful, kind of wanting,
resentment.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, the parallels now.
Yeah,
there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I kind of I recommend rewatching X.
Maybe before seeing Pearl?
Because they're so obviously tied together and everything, and informing. It's very cool.
Yeah.
So I also read Ty West's kind of like thematic drive or influence. He had said that X thematically explores how the rise of independent filmmaking affected society, which you get a lot of the conversations on like porn and sexuality and the freedom of that to like show publicly and everything. And then here he had said Pearl kind of explores Hollywood filmmaking's influence on people.
Yeah.
Which, you obviously get with Pearl and all her hopes and dreams, just like wanting to be a star like in the movies.
I just think it's really interesting that in this past year we've got a lot of like movies that have this introspective take on like the origins of filmmaking.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I know this has nothing to do with this film, but like we saw that in Nope. Yeah. And like we're seeing that in this.
Oh my god.
And it's kind of like a cool theme that I feel like more filmmakers are kind of diving into and exploring. Yeah. And I do love that, and I feel like it's very interesting because I mean, for us, that's not necessarily anything new for us because Chris and I did study film.
Yeah.
But for the average viewer, I think it's really cool because it gives them an insight in Hollywood and filmmaking, and in this case, like the big silver screen that like people may not have known about previously. Yeah. Like I feel like nobody would know what a Foley is. Mm-hmm. I mean, at least most people I feel like wouldn't know what that is. Mm-hmm. And to not know that, like, sexuality wasn't looked at in film in the early ages. And, like, if that were a scene, like, Pearl made a comment when she was watching the porn and they were, these women being exposed. She was like, is that even legal?
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people are aware that, like, I mean, having your ankles show for a while in film was deemed, like, absolutely horrible and not allowed, and it was scandalous and risque. So I just think it's this really cool kind of looking in to like what we're watching essentially. Yeah, which is very interesting.
Yeah, and just how filmmaking and films in general, just, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows at some level, but just seeing how much influence they can have on like society and like the norms and the hopes and dreams of people and like how they choose to carry their lives, and then in some of the most fucked up ways. Not saying that it's that the takeaway is like filming inspired, you know, like movies create psychos. No, not at all. But like, I don't know. I think we could relate to it in some way.
I think it's too often we view as films as like a portrait of people's lives.
Yeah.
And we don't see it flipped the other way around in how films can kind of influence the way that people live their lives. Yeah. So it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Real quick, Adam, did you have any comments on that?
I mean, maybe just like the Yeah, because like the deviancy in film, but Christine kind of already mentioned it. It's like, but I feel like her mom, it's like repressing like actual life, and like there's kind of like facade in early pictures and stuff, which is why I think independent film started to rise up, because it felt more real.
Yeah.
And that's what the guy says too, is like, this is real stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Which I think is actually kind of a cool play with Maxine coming out, because the 80s was kind of the beginning of home video. Yeah. Which kind of opened up filmmaking to a brand new market. And we were seeing films that we would have never gotten the chance to see before, which kind of alludes me to think that Maxine is going to be the most brutal of all the films. Because of the way that we've kind of witnessed home video, like in real life, we got to see, and especially in horror, we got to see things that we never could have imagined would have been on the big screen. So
since these are kind of, you know, like have slasher aspects to it, especially X, but like, you know, 80s when it's really like booming, I really wonder how much they're gonna play into that.
Just made me that thought just made me way more excited for Maxine.
I'm really interested to see what they do with the character of Maxine, especially since this is after she survives the events of X. Like, where's she going now? I mean, she still has her mind set on her stardom. Cycles, though. The way how we're seeing the cycles repeat, like, and obviously since it's like the same resemblance of character.
And then you brought this up too. So like in X, we kept seeing that video or like clip replay on that small TV of like the religious kind of pastor speaking over and over that we learned later was Maxine's dad. And we didn't see any of that in this film, obviously, because we're speaking on Pearl. So I'm kind of curious to see how that comes into play in the third and final film.
Yeah, especially you were bringing up, I mean, 80s was the start of like the real satanic panic, and you know, seeing that Maxine may have come from like a religious
background,
super religious background, who and she left that. I wonder how that will come back.
I'm really, really interested in Maxine. I love the idea of home video and video nasties and just like religious oppression of film and television in that era, which I mean I feel like kind of came to a head in later in the 90s, but there was a buildup in the 80s that eventually led to that. So I'm kind of excited to see how that all plays through.
I mean, just this whole production, like this whole concept and like doing them all together so quick is just such a phenomenon.
It's just making me fall in love with Ty West all over again. And really making me appreciate his art and his craft. And
his way of thinking, like, wow.
And not just that, but the way that he Hello? The way that are they censoring us? The way that he just unfolds horror, because it's very unique, and not a lot, I feel like not a lot of directors can do it the way that Ty West can, where it's a very slow, gradual build, but it comes to this massive head.
You know, usually slasher and slasher franchises or trilogies usually have like, you know, certain formulas or expectations to them. And so this is technically a sequel, prequel, but it's like the second installment. As our beloved Randy points out, they have usually have a particular, you know, set of rules, like the body count is always higher or bigger. The death scenes are much more elaborate, more blood. And then this one obviously doesn't apply, but never ever under any circumstances assume the killer is dead. Just to name some of them. How do you feel did it completely not follow any of the usual sequel slasher formula? Would you even apply like the slasher rules to these movies at all?
Okay, I think if we were to apply them, I don't think they necessarily fit, because I don't think the body count was higher in this film.
But then, if you're looking at those specific rules, do we even consider this a sequel? Because it is a prequel.
Yeah, and, like, yeah, how does the time, like, the actual narrative timeline fit into it or affect that? It's just such an enigma.
Yeah, that's like, kind of a cool concept to think about. And I think maybe that just calls for a review of Scream to see if they ever talk about prequel rules to land that and see if this falls under any prequel rules.
Yeah, because I would say it really doesn't follow any formula. Yeah. It's kind of its own, but they're so, like, they're obviously so packed together. Yeah. These three movies are so tied together. And
I feel like the only two things I've noted that kind of follow any sort of, like, traditional quote-unquote slasher kind of thing is the tripping.
Yeah.
If you trip, you die.
Yeah.
That happened. Right. And then, I mean, maybe not necessarily traditional to slasher rules, but just like serial killers is all of the animal killings.
Yeah. Which is sex. I guess not. It didn't, it was like most of the characters, at least in X, who had sex did die. Except for Maxine.
Same for Pearl, because she had sex with the projectionist and then he died.
The Scarecrow? No, I'm just kidding.
Can we talk about the Scarecrow scene and how uncomfortable that was? Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Scarecrows are always pretty creepy, but, like, this one's head with, like, the eyes.
Just, for me, it was when she was humping the Scarecrow and they kept coming back to the Scarecrow's face. I don't know. I just felt like it was going to come to life and it was going to be this weird kind of scare, but it never did. But I think it kind of shows her own psychological kind of understanding of things.
Because it felt like a dead body, and which makes me think back to X more so, but
it was definitely creepy.
And it was very interesting that, this one was definitely less so focused on her sexual desires. There's like, the small parts, but like,
which I feel like that's definitely going to come up again, but I feel like it's still showcasing her desires, but it wasn't so much set on her sexuality quite yet. I think she was still kind of, I don't want to say scared of it, but again, with that whole theme of repression.
Yeah. It's more so, like, just focused on her character building. It feeds into that. Yeah. And, like, you could even say in X, it's like, if you just think that she's just sex crazed, like, you're missing something.
You're missing. Yeah.
Like,
because she definitely wasn't in X. There was a lot more to it.
Yeah. And here, you really get, obviously, the background and motivations of that.
And I think that Pearl's kind of obsession with sex in X might just be a side effect of her not getting her desires fulfilled, because I think it has less to do with sex than just desire.
Yeah.
And when she's not being fulfilled, it kind of leaks out into other aspects of her life, and in this case it happened to do with sex. Yeah.
I mean, I really want to, after seeing Pearl, like, go back and watch X, especially since temporarily, it's in line. Do you have any expectations for Maxine now? Like, what do you, are you hoping for to get anything? Or since, X and this one, they had these themes on how, like, we already talked about that. Just the filmmaking kind of idea, like, as a medium.
I don't know necessarily of the filmmaking idea as a medium, but, like, I feel like there's been, we got the build of what Maxine could be in Pearl.
Yeah.
And then we saw in X what Maxine ended up as. And I kind of want to see how all of this came to a head in, like, her prime years of her life.
Right.
And how this all unfolded. Like, we knew how it started. Now I want to see how it festered, because we also know how it ended. So I feel like the sequel is going to be the most climactic part of the movie, where we're really going to see the psychosis of, like,
Maxine and like how all of these other characters kind of shaped and molded her as a person, and how that drama how drama and trauma have kind of molded and shaped this character, and if that cycle is still reoccurring.
Right, especially since you have Maxine played by Mia Goth, who, you know, obviously it's like almost like a reincarnation of Pearl, you know, having that same drive and desire for stardom. Will she become a star?
If Pearl ends up being somehow tied to Maxine more than just in a happenstance kind of way in X, but she just doesn't know it, you know?
I know.
Which would be interesting.
I think, I'm holding... And I like how this trailer does not show like anything yet. So that's giving me a lot of like, oh God, like what are they gonna do in this one?
But I don't necessarily think it's expectations that I'm putting on it, but it's more just curiosities to see like what's gonna develop in this last film, because all of these, I mean, X and Pearl have kind of succeeded my expectations. So I'm really looking forward to Maxine.
Yeah, same. It really does feel like it's all coming to a head.
Yeah.
This should be interesting. Will she keep her X factor? Time will tell. Well, yeah, I mean... Oh, okay. I guess final cut.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Final cut.
Okay, your favorite scene. I mean, I believe we've both already kind of mentioned this.
It's got to be the little round table scene.
Yeah.
With Maxine and Mitzi, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just
I mean,
impressive.
We've already went into why we love it so much. Do you have a favorite shot, like, technically?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple. Yeah. So I really liked the split screen when she's kind of brushing her mother's hair and setting her up for that dinner scene. It was just so disturbing, but the split scene kind of made it feel a little phantasmical and whimsical, and
it felt in line with like the dreaminess of those type of Gilded Age, like, I don't know, that's golden age of Hollywood type of films. And especially I was just thinking, like, because we learned about this in film school, but you know, during the Great Depression, they started making films that were so grand and spectacle to like take your mind away from the fucking horrors of reality.
And I think this did an effective job of kind of portraying that.
Yeah, stylistically.
And I think my second one was the way that the camera kind of followed Maxine and Mitzi at that kind of head of their conversation. Because it felt incredibly predatory and creepy, and it was just like, ugh.
Yeah, and still like a slow burn, like you're just waiting for her to slowly, she's starting to catch up, waiting for that final.
And my last and final scene that I found just, I didn't even know what to think of it while it was happening, and I was expecting the worst, is when she knocks on the door of the projectionist's room and he shows her the clip of the porno, and Maxine is looking through the projectionist box, and you just see him kind of in the corner, but all you see of him is his torso, and he keeps readjusting his belt, and it's just, again, super predatory. And that just, I was like holding my breath watching it, expecting something really awful to happen, and when it didn't, I was like, ooh, that was kind of an interesting shot. Like, I really liked it.
Yeah, I would agree with you on, especially, the wide shot of Pearl chasing after Mitzi, and I do really like, this one will kind of more go under editing sequences for me, but like the opening, I do like when she first puts her dead parents at the dinner table and she's sitting with them and having dinner. That shot. Yeah, I guess I'll go into editing sequences. So starting from the opening behind the barn doors, and when they open up like curtains to a grand movie like Gone with the Wind or The Sound of Music or something. And then you're in one of her fantasies already, and it's very bright, and dreamy, and she's dancing, talking to the animals, and then she's in her mom's dress in her room, and she's like dancing, and the light is like a stage performance lighting, and then it cuts when her mom opens the door and the music drops and it's dull and dark, and you're like, oh, setting the tone, you know, especially for the intro of the mom's character. So that's my first favorite editing sequence. I would say the next one is Pearl's audition for the dance troupe, because the way it weaves, it like just transitions seamlessly into, again, her fantasy of like performing on stage as part of a chorus line. Was just really, really great.
I agree. Can I go back?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that my favorite editing was that split screen moment.
Right.
It was beautiful, and I loved how it kind of went from her setting up her mother and cleaning up her mom to them at the dinner table.
It also, I also like how it kind of has some comedy in it. You know, when she's like throwing the body parts of Mitzi. Yeah. And it's just, but it's so like dreamy.
Yes.
and childlike, or like, whimsical, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then I want to take that away and add to my favorite shot, the end scene of Pearl.
Oh, yes.
Where she's just smiling as the end credits roll and the end cards kind of go through, and her smile is, I wouldn't say unwavering, but it's still there. And you see tears just fall from her face, and it looks like she's in pain.
Twitching.
And, her
muscles.
Forehead muscles are going ham, and her eyes are getting red, and I mean, it just went through until that final moment where the end card just kind of swallows her into black, and it was just, that was a stunning way to kind of end the film. And dare I say that that's kind of my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah,
like, it was
striking. So striking,
beautiful,
and it's just so telling that our whole theater was like uncomfortably laughing, you know, through it, but we all sat through it. And
I love how Pearl didn't really, like, she literally didn't say anything in that end scene, but it said so much at the same time.
Captivating.
Yeah. So that one definitely had to make the final cut.
Yeah, definitely. This goes without saying, but favorite performance, the Mia Goth. Undoubtedly. But yeah.
Mia Goth. Oh. Little special shout out to all the farm animals.
Oh, they were great. They were great. That cow. The alligator.
Yeah. The little sheep, the little goat.
That goose really had a just great depth.
Poor goose. No. He's just hanging out.
I mean, he just waddled in and was like, quack, quack.
Yeah.
I mean,
and she's like,
goose, goose.
Nope.
No.
Goose.
Did they quack? What's their names?
Yeah.
But yeah.
They honk.
Honk, honk. Yeah, that's true. They fucking honk.
They do.
Can we get a reprisal role of a Goose and Maxine?
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts on the music? I just thought it obviously paired so well with the overall style. I mean, of that
100%
Technicolor.
Yeah, it
melodrama.
just felt very, very like Wizard of Oz, Sound of Music, Gone with the Wind.
It made me want to watch one of those movies at that time.
Yeah. Any other final cuts?
No, that concludes it. Shing.
Yes, Pearl.
Oh, let's not forget the callback to Lemonade.
Oh my God. I cannot believe we forgot the lemonade.
That was one of the most satisfying things.
It was.
Just a great touch. I mean,
I
don't know why.
Standing there with the picture of it.
Christine and I always just latch on to a certain line or noise or something in a movie.
It's so dumb and it's so random. And like there's no telling what it could be.
I mean, and we completely exaggerate it. Yeah. Like would you like some lemonade?
Some lemonade.
Or I mean,
in our previous episode for Barbarian, we latched into the mother's ba 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 ba.
And the Boop.
Yeah, and the boop. And so that titled our episode for Barbarian.
Yeah.
And then if you go back as far as X, we titled that episode Lemonade and Disco, because it was very reminiscent of that film for us. So,
and just to have her, just for it to wait till the end, because I kind of was looking out throughout the movie. I was like, are they drinking lemonade?
Too. Very, like, very subtly.
No, they're drinking water, they're drinking milk. And then the last, she just the ending amazing shot on her that's super unsettling, holding a big old pitcher of lemonade when her husband comes home and sees the fucking horror show.
So I don't know if you expected this, but when Mitzi and Pearl come back to the house, and Mitzi's like, I'll get you something special to drink. Yeah. And she puts the 2 cups on the counter. I 1,000% was convinced it was going to be lemonade, and then it was milk. And I was like, maybe they're just not going to do... Fuck. That's what she said, though. But it wasn't. It wasn't.
No.
And I was convinced. And then it wasn't, and I was let down, and I was like, lemonade's just not going to make an appearance. And then, boom, we got lemonade.
I love how just drinking a glass of milk is just not a thing anymore.
That is disgusting. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry if you're a milk drinker and if you enjoy drinking milk by the cupful, but you are gross. I don't.
Oh. I used to. Growing up, was my dad was like, build strong bones, which I don't even think is real. But yeah, we used to have a glass of milk with dinner. It's fucking like with spaghetti dinner, glass of milk. It sounds horrible now.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna double down. You're gross.
I can only have a glass of milk if it's with something sweet, like a dessert.
And that I can respect.
Just a dessert, like dipping cookies.
I can respect it, but just a glass of milk to quench your thirst.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts? I think that was a pretty good wrap up with the final cut.
Go watch it. I think if you were a fan of X, you're going to love it.
It's a fun theater experience. I mean, we're always just going to recommend seeing stuff in theaters.
I mean, that's just the ultimate way to see it.
Yeah.
And so I definitely highly recommend seeing it in theaters. I think it exemplifies the grandness that the movie was intending to kind of come across as.
Absolutely.
And just go see it. If you liked X in the least bit, I think you're going to have a lot of fun with Pearl.
Yeah. It would be cool to see it in an old-timey theater. Or, just a vintage kind of theater. That'd be dope.
What I want to do? I want them to hold a triple feature when Maxine comes out. Yes. So we could do X, and then Pearl, and then Maxine. So everything could be fresh in our minds.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. Well, folks, that concludes our episode on Pearl.
So there you go.
And please let us know what your favorite final cuts were of this film. Reach out to us on any of our social media, so you can always email us. And with that being said, I'll be right back.